So, good afternoon, everyone. Let's review the topics which we have already studied in operating system. In last class, we have studied about deadlock and synchronization. In deadlock, we have studied four necessary conditions. So, the first necessary condition was mutual exclusion. The second condition was hold and wait. Third condition was no preemption, and the final condition was circular wait. These were four conditions which we have to consider in case of deadlock, and there were four solutions to deadlock. So the solutions were: first was deadlock prevention, in which we were trying to violate any one condition of these four conditions. Of these above four conditions, we try to violate one of the condition, and it is deadlock prevention. Second one was deadlock avoidance. In deadlock avoidance, we try to avoid the deadlock by considering the maximum requirement of a process. We take maximum requirements of a process in the start and try to avoid that by using safety algorithm. The fourth one was third one, deadlock detection and recovery. So in deadlock detection, we try to run safety algorithm on current needs, not on maximum needs. And if the deadlock is not occurring right now, then we allow it. If it is occurring, then we have detected the deadlock. And in recovery, we try to run a three-step process. The one is find the deadlock which is occurring the process, and after that either terminate that process or get the resources from that process, that is snatching, and then check if the deadlock is still occurring. If not, then we have recovered from the deadlock, and if it is occurring again, then do the process again. That is deadlock detection and recovery. And the fourth one was deadlock ignorance. In deadlock ignorance, we completely ignore whether the deadlock is occurring or not. If it is occurring, then handle it yourself. Operating system has nothing to do with it. That is deadlock ignorance, and Microsoft Windows uses this technique only. Then we have talked about synchronization. In concurrently running processes, we need synchronization, otherwise two things will happen. Because see, one is race condition may arise, and that will leads to inconsistent state. Race condition was when the output is dependent on the order of execution, that is race condition. And inconsistent state is the output is not consistently coming same every time. For example, if you are using a calculator and you do 2 plus 2, sometimes on doing 2 plus 2 it is giving 4, and sometimes on 2 plus 2 it is giving 44, sometimes it is giving 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. You cannot rely on such a calculator, and you will say the inconsistent result is occurring, that is inconsistent state. So the section which is having the common variables, we called it as critical section. The section which is having the common variables, shared memory, that is called critical section, and we have to safeguard this critical section by using entry and exit points. By using entry and exit points, we have to safeguard this critical section, and in order to make our process synchronized, we have some solutions. So the first solution is by using software based solution, and here we have Decker's or Peterson solution. The second one and most important one, very important one, is OS provided structures, that is semaphore and monitor. OS provided structures. And the third one is, which is not much important from the perspective of interview, but if they ask you what are the solutions, then you can answer it, that is hardware based solution. And here we have two solutions, one is swap and another one is test and set. These are two solutions under hardware instruction. This is not much important from interview perspective, but if they ask you what are the solutions, then you can name all of these at least. Let's talk about OS provided structures, semaphore and monitors. So what are OS provided structures? So semaphore, what is semaphore? Semaphore is nothing but an OS provided structure, OS provided structure and two atomic operations. See, this structure is nothing but the same thing which we were using in C language, like structure book, structure node, that kind of structure it is, but it is provided by operating system, it is not user made structure. What are two atomic operation? One is signal and another one is wait. By using these two atomic operations and semaphore, we can control our critical section. We can avoid the leakage of memory or inconsistent state. Okay, so let's understand what is these atomic operations. So atomic operation are the operations which work in single go, that is no context switch before completion of these operations. Before the completion of these operations, context switch cannot happen. And how it is possible? It is possible because OS switch off all the interrupts before execution of these instructions. Before the execution of these instructions, operating system switch off all the interrupts, and if interrupt will not happen, then obviously the problem of context switch will not happen. So this signal and wait, this signal is also called as up and wait is also called as down. So this is used. Let's see the functional description of these and you will understand better. Functional description of first, let's say signal. And I forgot to tell you that semaphore are of two types. One is binary and another one is counting semaphore. So let's understand the functional description of counting semaphore first. Counting semaphore. So in counting semaphore means the value of mutex, let's say this is semaphore mutex is equal to 0. This mutex is a variable name and it is of type semaphore. So mutex can have any value from minus infinity to plus infinity. So counting means it can have any value in our number line. That is counting semaphore. So let's see the signal. So signal is semaphore mutex, and if my mutex, before that let's, since signal is a up, so it will increment the mutex. If mutex is less than equal to 0, then wake up a process P1 from queue. This is the functional description of signal. Whereas if we see the functional description of wait, then how it works? It works like this: semaphore mutex, and then mutex minus minus, and after that if mutex is less than 0, then block the process P1 and add it to queue. This is how the signal and wait works. So let's take an example. Let's say we have one process P1 and another process P2. Both are using this mutex. Let's say the mutex value is 0 for now, for 1. Let's say mutex value is 1 for now. I have critical section and here also critical section. Critical section is where the memory which is shared is used, and answer become inconsistent if we don't safeguard it. So let's say I have written wait mutex here and signal mutex here. Here also let's say wait mutex and signal mutex. Now what will happen? Let's say this statement run first, wait mutex. So in wait mutex, whenever it will go inside, it will decrement the value of mutex first. So 1 will become 0. If mutex is less than 0, no, it is equal to 0. So condition is false. So it will not go inside if, and it will come out. It will come out and it will go in the next statement. I am into critical section right now. If at all I am able to access the critical section of both the processes at the same time, then my mutual exclusion condition will get violated. And I am not asking you, I don't want to go into mutual critical section of both the processes at a time. So let's try to forcibly go. So if I run and I do context switch in this, in between of running this wait and signal, the context switch cannot happen. That means after mutex minus minus, context switch cannot happen, because it is all the interrupts are switch off that time. But after running this wait, when we are inside the critical section, the context switch can happen. And let's say the context switch occurs and I am here in wait mutex. So it will become -1 because mutex will be decremented because of wait. And now since it is -1 which is less than 0, condition become true, and inside if block the process P1, that is this is P2, the calling process P1, or let's say PI, I can write PI here. Block the process PI, that is P2, and add it to queue. So what we will do is we have a queue and we will add it here. It is blocked right now. The process is blocked. So we cannot go inside the critical section of P2. That is, mutual exclusion is not violated. And when we come out of this critical section, the signal will work. And what signal will do? Signal will increment the value of mutex. So this mutex will become 0. And now mutex is less than equal to 0 condition is true because we have equal to here. So wake up a process Pi from the queue. So whatever we have in the start of the queue, wake up. And when it is outside the critical section, the signal is completed. Now wake up, that means we can go inside the critical section. So here progress is also maintained. So we have three conditions. The first condition is, and after that if we do signal again, then it will come back to 1. So it was previously 1 and it is 1 now also. So the previous state is maintained. So first condition is mutual exclusion. The second is progress, and third is bounded waiting. So these three conditions, and let's say the fourth condition is architectural neutral. Architecture neutral. So these are four conditions. These are secondary condition and these two are primary condition. So that means these two conditions must be satisfied at any cost, and we try to satisfy these conditions. If not possible, then we may compromise with them, but not with first and second condition. So mutual exclusion, at a time only one process is allowed to access the critical section. In progress, the progress should not be violated, that is, deadlock should not occur. And after one process, any other process is allowed to go inside. It should not happen if one process is coming out and it is saying that I will only allow the P2 to go and no other process is allowed. So that is, progress is violated. Bounded wait means starvation and bound on wait. So that means there should be a limited time for waiting. It should not happen that one process is waiting for infinite time. That is actually the condition of starvation. So starvation should not occur. And architectural neutral, that means we are not considering whether it is i5, i7 or dual core or octa core or quad core. We are nothing to do with it. We are working on the concept, not the architecture we are dependent on. So these are the four conditions you must remember in case of semaphore. Okay, in case of synchronization, and we are working on semaphore, and semaphore have two atomic instructions. So this is about semaphore. And now we have few problems which you may read about. So one is producer consumer problem. Then another one is reader writer problem, and one is dining philosopher problem. So these three problems you have to read. So what are these problems? First one is very simple. This is one buffer and we have to write into this buffer by using producer, and customers, that is consumers, are consuming the items from this buffer only. So this buffer is a common memory and we need to have a critical section. We need to safeguard it, otherwise the problem will arise. Reader writer problem. So read after read is allowed. Read with read, that is simultaneously two readers or more readers can be allowed to read. But whenever a reader is reading, writer must not be allowed, because if one is reading and somebody else write it, then the reader may read the wrong answer. Similarly, when someone is writing, another person should not be allowed to read. And when someone is writing, another person should not be allowed to write. Otherwise one will write something, another will write something, and maybe one of those two person updates will be persistent, and out of those two one update is lost. So these three things are not allowed, and the first one is allowed. So that is reader writer problem, and for that we have, and they are reading and writing from them from a same file. That's why it is a problem of synchronization. And dining philosopher is simple, that we have a dining table, and let's say 5 philosophers are there, and we have 5 chopsticks available. So for a philosopher to eat, that needs this and this, both the chopsticks. If both the chopsticks are not allowed, are not available with the philosopher, then he will not be able to eat. Now the problem here is, let's say what will happen if this person take this, and this person take this person take this and this. Now see, each and every philosopher is having one chopstick. Chopstick are the Chinese people eat by using chopsticks. I hope everybody know it. So now you know that 2 chopsticks are required to eat at a time. By using one chopstick, person cannot eat. So this person is having one chopstick, and now by using blue line I am showing you, it is waiting for this chopstick, it is waiting for this chopstick, it is waiting for this, it is waiting for this, and this is waiting for this. So they are holding a resource and waiting for one more resource in computer science terms. And now this is a problem of hold and wait, and we have to resolve this problem. So these are 3 kinds of problem which we have to solve by using our synchronization. So here we have finished our synchronization, and let's talk about some memory management topic. I have not very much very details about memory management topic, but what I want to tell you is the simple structure of memory that you already know. We are just revising it. So register is the smallest memory, then we have cache, then we have RAM, and we may have magnetic disk, and we can have magnetic tapes. Both are different things. So register is like, if we talk about size, let's say if we talk about size, so as we go down the size increases in the downward direction. So this is the smallest and this is the largest in size. Again, if we go into form of speed, then as we go up the speed increases. This is the slowest and this is the fastest. And if we talk about frequency, so again frequency dependent on speed. So whichever device is having high speed is also having highest frequency. So frequency also goes to increase from bottom to top. If we talk about cost, then cost also increases in this form. So this is the cheapest, whereas this is the costliest. Okay, this is costly. So these are the memories we have right now. And now see this, these three are volatile and these two are non-volatile. What is the meaning of volatile? Till the current is available, then the data is available. If current is gone, the data is gone. So if you shut off your system, cache, register, RAM, all are empty. But if you shut off your system, magnetic disk, that is your hard disk, is having data persistent. So it consists of data, still the data is available there. So that is non-volatile. So these are the memory hierarchy we are having. And now let's talk about this magnetic disk and magnetic tape in some brief. So magnetic disk is like the structure of this. So we are having this kind of structure in magnetic tape. So magnetic disc. So this is magnetic disc, like a compact disc. We are having tracks and sectors into magnetic disc. This is like this. So this is sector. This whole one circle is a track, and the number of sectors is same in each track. So that means here we have less space. So this is less space, whereas we have more space in our outer concentric circle. So that's why density is not equal in each track. Each track will have different density, because here since the number of sectors here in the outermost concentric circle and innermost concentric circle both are same, so that's why the density must be different. Okay, this gap is called sector internal gap, and there is a gap in between of two concentric circles. So you can consider like this green line is a gap between two concentric circles. This is called internal gap. Default size of sector is equal to 512 bytes. Okay, this is default size of sector. Now let's say if you have this disk, so you are seeing from top, so that time you are seeing from top, this is the structure. But if you see it from sideways, then you have something called arm, and here you have something called spindle. This is called spindle, and here we have multiple discs like this. We have multiple discs on this spindle, and we have heads which are fixed on this arm, which are reading the data from the discs. So this is like this. So this is nothing but head, and this is the disc which we have shown here. This whole thing was a disc. Okay, so if you see from this point of view, this structure is shown, but if you see from the side view, this is the structure. Okay, and this disc is having two surfaces. So this is surface 1 and this is surface 2, and every disc may have two different surfaces. So this is how we have our disc organized, and this, if you consider this, then this is called a cylinder, and we can have multiple tracks, like we have this, we have this, we have this. Okay, we can have multiple tracks. So this will form another cylinder, this will form another cylinder. Okay, so the cylinder is equal to number of tracks per surface. We can have number of tracks per surface is equal to number of cylinders. So this is our magnetic disc. Let's see the structure of magnetic tape also. I'm going to finish in next 5 minutes. I'll keep it short today. So let's see magnetic tape structure. So magnetic tape is like a your, let's say, cassettes which you may have seen in your childhood. VCR is there, then audio cassettes were there, which is having a brown film. So that film is a magnetic tape. So we have like this magnetic tape. Okay, here we have this thing. So this thing is called block recording length, and this thing is called gap. Again, this is block recording length, and then again this is gap. So this is how this length, this tape goes on. And here we have a fixed head. So here this head can move forward and backward based on if we want to read this track or this track or this track, we have to move our head. But this head is fixed head. It cannot move unless what is movable? This tape is movable. Tape is movable. The head is not movable, and this head is having the heads like this, which is reading from all the tracks simultaneously. So what is this? N parallel track. This is N parallel track. And if you talk about this, then this is nothing but this is block capacity. So this is one block capacity. Okay, this is how our magnetic tape is divided, and this magnetic tape is having a length. Let's say it is till here. This is having a length of L. Okay, this length can be like 2400 feet or 2400 meters. This length of tape can be so large. Okay, this is how magnetic tape is organized. Okay, now in memory we have two more things. One is pages and another one is segments. So if we have contiguous memory, then we don't have to, then let's say this is RAM, then if it is contiguous memory, then we do not have to make the use of pages or segments. But in case some pages are going here, some pages are going here, some pages are going here, then we need to make sure whether this is page number 1, this is page number 2, this is page number 3. They cannot be in order also. Okay, so we have to maintain a list, let's say like this 0, 1, or let's say 1, 2 or 3. It is going into, let's say, frame number 1. This is frame number, let's say 10, and this is frame number 15. So we have to write 1, 10, 15 here, and this is called page table. This is called page table. Okay, since we have to know that which page number is stored in which frame, or which page number is stored in which frame, so for that purpose we need to have a page table. And this page table itself is stored in RAM, and RAM, so if you don't know, it is divided into frames, and process is divided into pages. So we need to store pages into RAM in order to store or for execution. So this page table is stored into frame, and if the page table is so large that it is not able to store in one frame, then we can have multiple page tables. So this is page table 1, this is page table 2, this is page table 3, and for that purpose we need segments. So if we have more page tables, then we move to segments. There are two more things which you will learn by yourself. One is external fragmentation and another one is internal fragmentation. External fragmentation occurs in contiguous memory allocation, and internal fragmentation occur in paging and segmentation also. And here in external fragmentation, in contiguous memory allocation, internal fragmentation also occur. So external fragmentation and internal fragmentation both can occur in contiguous memory allocation, whereas paging and segmentation only have internal fragmentation. External fragmentation cannot occur in paging and segmentation. Okay, so I will leave on you now, and I will also take some queries in some session. If you have any questions, you